prayer for all travelers, young and old, aching and joyful, weary and full of life. The ones who are here and the ones who are not here. The ones who are like you. And they are all like you. We read this prayer aloud in Spanish and in English before setting off for a water drop in the desert. We left at 7 o'clock in the morning because it would be a hot day, over 100 degrees, even hotter in the desert. Our guide from the group No Mas Muertes, No More Death, which is a ministry of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Tucson, told us that this part of the desert is called Devil's Highway because it is so dangerous, so deadly. So many people disappear in the desert, their remains ravaged by its hostility, that the volunteers who do this work no longer talk about bodies or people recovered. They talk only now about remains. Because the people who volunteer to do this work find a skull here, some bones over there, remains of madres, abuelos, of babies. They want people. They want us to understand the harshness of crossing in the desert, to imagine the conditions that make this a good choice, a best choice for some people. On this day, our group traveled deep into the desert on foot, carrying gallons of water and non-perishable food to leave for travelers. The bottles had messages like suerte, luck, fuerza, strength. Tú eres amado. You are loved. Agua pura para ti. Pure water for you. And bienvenidos. Welcome. We write these messages on the bottles so that when people come across them, there is some small assurance that they can be trusted, that this is not a trick, that the water is not poisoned, that this is not a trap, that it was left by friends, if they find them, before Border Patrol agents have had a chance to slash the bottles, or to simply pour the water out onto the ground. And we know they do this because they were caught on video doing this. But when we find an empty bottle half a mile from the drop, we know that someone has found a bottle and traveled with it, drinking. We bring the empty bottle back to clean and refill for some new volunteers to return to the desert another day. Why are so many people attempting to cross in the desert? I can give you a lecture on some of the international economic policy, on some of the geopolitics that are causing people to flee their homes. And I will probably do this in the fall, not on a Sunday morning. But what I want to focus on today is not why people are fleeing their homes, but why they are attempting to cross this devil's highway. Because this passage is a direct and expected result of U.S. border policy, prevention through deterrence. The idea is to use the desert as a weapon, to seal off urban entry points, thus funneling migrants deeper and deeper into the desert, risking dehydration, risking injury, heat stroke, exhaustion, hypothermia, risking death. The idea is that the dead bodies of friends and families lost to the desert will be a deterrent for anyone else willing to take that risk. This strategy, this policy, does not take into account the desperation of those fleeing their homes, not just poverty, but also violence, sometimes state-sponsored. To travel to and from the desert, our group must pass through internal border checkpoints. There are 33 permanent internal border checkpoints. These are checkpoints not at the actual border, but located on U.S. roads in U.S. cities that U.S. citizens must pass through every day to do things like buy groceries, or go to the bank, or go to school. There are almost as many internal border checkpoints as there are at the actual border. What's happening at the border is a travesty. It is a crime against humanity. And if you are thinking that the border is far away and not really our concern, all the way over here in Long Island, then think again. The U.S. government has extended surprising permission to the Department of Homeland Security agents in border zones as far as 100 miles away from the border into the country. So imagine a map of the United States. And then imagine a thick band all along the edges. That is the U.S. border zone. Nearly 2/3 of the population lives within these border zones, more than 65%. All of New York, most of New York State, certainly all of Long Island is within this border zone. And when I say that the U.S. government has extended surprising permission for DHS agents, what I mean is that the U.S. government has and continues to curtail our human and civil rights. In these border zones, Border Patrol agents are empowered to set up checkpoints, board and search buses, trains, airplanes, boats, seize private vehicles, search our laptops, our phones, our tablets, set up surveillance on private property. Border Patrol agents have wide discretion to stop, question, detain people simply suspected of immigration violations. Most people who are aware of this, and most of us are not aware of it, but most people who are aware of it because earlier this year, when Border Patrol agents boarded a Greyhound bus en route from Orlando to Miami, the bus made a stop in Fort Lauderdale when the driver announced that they would be boarded for what he called routine search. During the search, the Border Patrol agents arrested a woman of Jamaican origin who was carrying an expired tourist visa. She was traveling to meet her granddaughter for the first time. Just this week, a Border Patrol agent in Montana demanded identification and detained two young women, Ana Suda and her friend Mimi Hernandez, at a local gas station where they had run in to get milk and eggs. Both women are U.S. citizens. The agent admitted that he detained the women for nearly an hour because they were speaking Spanish. Because they were speaking Spanish. The incident left Suda's 7-year-old daughter wondering if she is allowed to speak Spanish in public anymore. This we allow in the name of security. We allow in the name of law and order. We allow this in our name when we don't speak up. What's happening at the border is a travesty, and it is a crime against humanity. And it barely scratches the surface of how these effects ripple out into our society, how they are seeping into the fabric of our communities and our discourse. We cannot be content to let this be someone else's issue. We cannot remain silent. I promised someone that I would give some concrete ideas of actual things that people can do here in this community. We can start local, learn Spanish, meet our Spanish-speaking neighbors more than halfway. Know that not all immigrants in this community are Spanish-speaking. Educate yourselves and others about the conditions that are compelling migration. Partner with local organizations who are providing direct service to immigrants. Witness. Witness what is happening at the Riverhead Jail, where people without valid documentation are being detained. Reconsider sanctuary and solidarity, not as a strategy only of housing people with final deportation orders, but as a multifaceted strategy of wraparound support for people in final deportation, and of advocacy that addresses the root causes of immigration and the immigration system itself. Sanctuary and also solidarity. Imagine a world where families are not separated, where people are not separated by borders, where 20-year-old girls are not shot by Border Patrol agents, where 16-year-old boys across the border in their own neighborhood, in their own country, are not killed by Border Patrol agents. We can imagine something different. We can do something different. The Reverend Rod Richards writes, "We humans are the line drawers. We are border makers. We are the boundary testers. We are the census takers. We draw a line to separate this from that so we can clearly see what is. We create a border to define our place so that we can take care of what's there. We test boundaries to find if they are real, if they are necessary, if they are just. We congregate within those boundaries in families and tribes and cities and countries that we call us, and we call people on the other side them. But our minds see boundaries that our hearts know not. The lines we draw disappear when viewed with the eyes of compassion. The recognition of human kinship does not end at any border. A wiser part of us knows that the other is us, and we are them. Let justice flow like water and peace like a never-ending stream. Let compassion glow like sunlight and love like a never-ending beam. The rain, the sunshine, the breeze, the life-giving air we breathe. They know no boundaries. Neither do our empathy, our goodwill, our concern for one another. God has no borders. Love has no borders. I invite you to rise as you feel able and join in singing our closing hymn, 121, We'll Build a Land.